Hey, Student Success, welcome to week 14. It's hard to believe we are almost done. So I don't know about you, but like summer is just right there on the horizon. So week 14 runs from April 25th to May 1st. So we're getting to May already. So that's exciting. So just as a reminder, that means your student services assignment is coming due at the end of week 16. I've had them start to come in a little bit more the last couple of weeks as people have been attending and submitting those certificates. So please make sure that you register if you have not already done so and attend that workshop. Remember, it's just one workshop. If you attend more, that's fantastic, but you don't have to. And most of them are on Zoom. I know a couple like Student Leadership Academy type things are in person, but it's whatever you're comfortable with and obviously whatever fits your schedule. All right, so quick announcements besides making sure your student services assignment is due. Week 1 was reopened during week 13, the end of week 13. I did see a couple of you in there working, so I was excited to see that you were taking advantage of that. Week 2 is reopening at the tail end of week 14. So you can see already it is scheduled to open on Friday, Saturday, Sunday of week 14. So the 29th, 30th, and 1st. So if you, again, at the beginning of the semester, I know this is thinking all the way back to like January time, if you enrolled late or you just got a slow start in Blackboard, whatever it might be, there is a chance to make up some assignments from week 2. So please take advantage of that if that can help your grade and you want to do so. So that's the second assignment I wanted to address. All right, so I'm going to scroll down to week 14. You can see that we're going to be in chapter 5. You can see there are 2 assignments. There's no discussion forum this week. So attendance is based on completing both assignments by Sunday. Only completing one will earn you 50% attendance. If you complete both, you'll get 100% attendance for week 14. All right, so we are in chapter 5, reading to learn. So in the materials folder, you can see that there is a link and our slides. So I'm going to go ahead and use the slides to direct our discussion, although you are certainly welcome, and I'll talk about the textbook link as well. All right, chapter 5, reading to learn. So the big takeaways is we want to view college reading differently than high school reading, mostly because in college, according to the College Reading Learning Association, about 85% of what we learn in college is done through reading. And so whether that's like reading our textbooks, reading supplemental materials, reading additional resources to help us with things, a lot of it is reading. And a lot of it's done on our own because you're not necessarily reading in class like you might have in high school or previous experiences with education. So it is so important to kind of have these active reading skills and really taking personal responsibility for what you're reading. The rule of thumb typically is to spend about 2 or more hours on homework for every hour you spend in class. Now, obviously that's going to differ a little bit. You know, there are some classes where you're going to need that, if not more, and other classes you're not going to need that much. So just kind of keep that as just like a guideline, not necessarily like a stick to it, have to do it type thing. So we want to think about reading in a cycle or a process. So oftentimes people, when they write, they understand writing is a process because you have to brainstorm and draft and edit and write and edit and proofread and edit and draft and all those things. Like, we know this. The same thing is done for reading. You cannot always expect to read something from start to end 100% and get through it and understand it just like that. Reading is a process. You might have to read a section, go back and reread it, go back and look up words, go back and capture main ideas, whatever that is. It's okay if you don't understand what you're reading the first time through. And it's not a sign of a weakness of reading. Some students will say, oh, I have to reread. It takes so much time. It means I'm a poor reader. Not at all. Actually, if you're recognizing that you have to go back and reread because you missed something or didn't understand it, you're actually a good reader. You're recognizing, you're very metacognitively aware that you didn't understand. So there are things to think about with the reading process. And this is what this chapter talks about, like preparing to read, doing the reading, looking at those key ideas, and then spending time reviewing. So what does preparing to read mean? It's just what it sounds like. First of all, like the basics, like have your materials, have them ready to go, but also like making sure you have the time, making sure that you have the environment, all of those things. And then, are you reading for a purpose? Sometimes your instructor will give you a purpose. You know, hey, you read this chapter, there's a quiz next time I see you, or read this chapter, you have to write on it. Sometimes they don't give you a purpose, so you might have to come up with your own. You know, when I'm done reading this chapter, I want to define these keywords, or I want to be able to summarize in my own words. Okay, so have a purpose in mind that's going to keep you a little bit more engaged. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes when I read, if I don't have a purpose, or I think I'm just going to read it just to check it off my to-do list, I'm not engaged, and I just glaze over the page and I get a little sleepy. So I have to have a purpose for reading that's going to keep me going. Other things you want to do to prepare to read: preview it. How is it set up? Are there bold, italics? Are there questions that can help guide my reading at the beginning or the end of the chapter? How many pages? Because that's going to help me dictate how much time I'm going to spend on this. You know, what do I already know about this topic that's going to help me as I move through? And previewing is going to give you an idea of what you're about to read, so you can start kind of firing up the previous knowledge. It's really going to help you. Some other things, again, you want to think about is like, how is this going to connect to my course or my major? Or, you know, what is this going to do for me? What does the instructor want me to get from this? And again, sometimes you might have to come up with that on your own if your instructor doesn't specifically give that. So again, preview, that can be anywhere from 30 seconds to a couple of minutes. Not a long time, but it does a lot for overall comprehension. Just getting to know how it's structured, what the purpose of your reading is, how long it's going to take you to kind of manage your time. Is this going to be something difficult because it's a brand new idea? And so maybe you need to have your computer ready to look some things up, whatever it might be. So also with the reading, as you go through, your headings and subheadings are a roadmap. It lets you know, like, hey, here's what each section is going to be about. You could also use those headings to turn into questions. Like, there can kind of be a built-in purpose. Like, every time you see a subheading, turn it into a question, and then your goal as you read that section is to answer that question. So, you know, think about those sections. What do you know about those? And here's the big thing: section it. If you have like a 10-page chapter, even though 10 pages isn't terribly long, it can be tedious to go through all 10 pages. Because if you start on page 1 and then you get to page 10 and realize, well, I've been lost since page 2, you've just wasted a lot of your time. So chunk it up. Only read like a couple sections or a couple pages at a time with the goal of understanding just that section. And that way, if you get lost or don't understand what's happening in just that one section, you don't have to reread 10 pages. You might only have to reread 1 or 2 to be able to kind of catch what you did not understand. When you read, you should only be reading. Do not do anything like highlighting or take notes or anything. Read the section all the way through first. Then go back and see, what questions can I answer? What are the relationships between all these ideas? Then take your notes and highlight. Because if you highlight or underline or annotate or take notes or anything while you read, you think everything's important. And so you often highlight just about everything on the page, and then your whole page is highlighted or underlined. General rule of thumb is about 25% of your page should be highlighted or underlined or taken notes on, because that's really what's important. So read the section, then go back and highlight or annotate, because then you have perspective on what was really the key point in that particular section. Okay. So again, capture the key ideas, really look back and see what was important here. Are there vocabulary terms I need to define? Do I need to answer any questions my teacher has posed or the book has posed or I wanted to find the answers to? And then spend time reviewing, even if there's not a test or anything coming up. We forget what we don't review very quickly. And so we want to work on building what we just spent time on with our reading, moving it into our long-term memory. So really take a look and answer questions. Go back and review those questions. Go back and review your notes. Go back and reread any sections or review your annotations or whatever that might be. Talk to other people about the text. Talk about it in class. So spend time with the material. All right, so in chapter 5 in the actual textbook, again, just as hopefully you're used to by now since we're in week 14, the beginning telling you about where do you want to go, what are your goals for reading, some differences between high school and college reading. How do you read? This goes over that reading process I just talked about. So I encourage you to really take a look through these sections, especially if you feel like you do struggle with reading, whether it's comprehension, whether it's vocabulary, whether it's just kind of getting into the groove of reading. So really spend time with those. There's a section on special texts. So if you are taking a math class or some type of science class or something like that, this does talk about, how to approach those a little bit more successfully. And then one of the last sections starts talking about building your vocabulary. Vocabulary is a great way to build your comprehension, because there's a strong correlation between vocabulary and comprehension. I mean, think about it. As you're reading, if you know the words, it's going to make your understanding easier. But if you don't know the words that you come across, how do you build your vocabulary? You know, what are things you can do? I like to share with my students freerice.com, and I realized I put a space there. It's a nice website that you can practice vocabulary, and there's actually other things up here, a whole bunch of different categories. It started off as a vocabulary website, but it's really morphed into quite a bit, so you could always look at those other categories if you're interested. But obviously, like right here, here's our vocabulary. Injure means, okay, to hurt. Got it right. But it also donates 10 grains of rice for every correct answer to the World Food Program. So it's kind of like a double. You build vocabulary, but then you also are doing something positive, and it gets so much more challenging as you go. And you can log in, create an account, and kind of keep track of how well you do, or just, you know, spend time as a guest sometime when you have a couple minutes in between classes or something. So it's a great way to build vocabulary as well as help a good program. You can also do things like, you know, Quizlet or Word of the Day, or read different things. Just read. That alone can help you build vocabulary. So lots of different ways to start building vocab. And this section talks about specifically ways to really do it. I know when I was a doctoral student, one of the things I did to help me build my vocabulary for my particular major was to have a vocabulary journal, because I kept coming across words like ontology and all these different things that I was like, not sure what this is. So I kept a vocab journal, so I knew whenever I came across this word, and I could look it up in my vocab journal, and then I eventually, you know, built it into my vocabulary, which was helpful for later. So having like a content area vocabulary journal might be beneficial. All right, so let's talk about your assignment. So again, 2 assignments due on Sunday for both attendance points and then obviously assignment points. You have a Chapter 5 assignment, which you click on this. It's going to open up into a Word document. This should look familiar. You've done something like this before. This is about reading, all things reading. Reading comprehension, reading speed, reading vocabulary. What are 2 things you can do to improve your reading comprehension? When are you going to do it? How do you know your comprehension has improved? What are you going to do to improve your reading speed? Now, when I say that, I don't mean make it faster. Faster reading is not always a good thing. Sometimes students say, I read so slow, I'm a poor reader. Speed doesn't always dictate how good or poor of a reader you are. However, if you are reading too quickly, you're probably missing some things. If you're reading too slowly, you might be laboring too hard and missing the overall point. So some people might need to speed it up while other people need to slow it down. So what can you do? You know, can you work on just being cognitive about that? Can you slow down, take breaks, use a ruler to keep your place, whatever it might be? When are you going to do that? And how will you know your speed has improved? Either you've got it quicker or slowed it down. And then your vocabulary. And again, for each of these areas, you are telling me 2 things you are going to do to improve those. When you are going to do those things, like the next time you read, the next time you're in class, how will you know that that area has improved? And you can, again, visit the chapter or the slides to help you kind of come up with that area. When you are done with that, you'll save it, and then you will bring it in here, like hopefully you're used to, and submit it in the Dropbox. The second assignment, to me it seems like a little strange, but because we're on an online class, a lot of the reading, all of the reading, it falls on you, right? So this is a survey called Is Online Learning Right for You? There's kind of 2 parts to this. First, you're going to take the survey. So it's hyperlinked right here. Take this short survey. So I'm going to click on it. It's going to take you to a page on our website. It's a web learning survey. And you're going to see there's a series of questions. You're just going to basically occasionally, seldom, what do you do in these cases? So just answer the question, hit submit. It's going to give you a score. I don't need your score. I can't see this page. Sorry. So I don't need you to take a screenshot of your score or anything like that. What you're going to do after you get your score, though, is go back into Blackboard, click in, and in the right submission area, you're going to answer these questions. Tell me your score. I earned a, whatever it is. I believe that online learning is right for me, or not right for me because. Okay, so that's what you're going to do. Tell me your score. Again, I don't need you to submit your score or anything because you see it. I can't see this page. You don't need to screenshot it or anything. You're just going to tell me your score. You know, I got a 24, whatever it is. I think that online learning is a good fit for me because, or it's not a good fit because. And that's what you're doing in that submission area. So really just like a sentence or two for that and then hit submit. All right, so week 14, make sure you look through the Chapter 5 materials, complete the Chapter 5 assignment, the online learning right for you. Take the survey, submit your kind of reflection, your response to that. All right, I hope everyone has a great week. See you later. Bye.